And they're off. The softball season officially opened up. Headlines all across the country, but here on the AllSooners Softball Show, we obviously are focused on Oklahoma and everything Patty Gasso's crew was doing. Oklahoma started the season off in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, a perfect 4-0, a couple of wins over top 11 teams in the FCA poll, a run rule victory, and a victory over Patty Gasso's alma mater. We're going to break all that down and so much more coming up here. Stay tuned. It's episode 3, first in-season episode of the AllSooners Softball Show, coming at you right now. Welcome in, Ryan Chapman here for AllSooners.com. It's finally here. We waited. The 2024 softball season off and running. Oklahoma, a couple of wins on Thursday. The 13-0 run rule victory over Utah Valley. A 3-0 shutout over the number 11 Duke Blue Devils. Then number 11 Duke Blue Devils. A thriller 4-3 over number 7 Washington in 8 innings. And then close out business 11-3 over Long Beach State. We're going to break it down. It's our first Tuesday episode, our first true Tuesday episode. We're going to recap the weekend. Typically, we'll have some guests, things like that, but it was so action-packed. We're just coming straight at you. On Thursday, we'll be back. So Tuesday is when this publishes, Tuesday at noon, obviously. Tuesday evening, we're going to meet with Patty Gasso. We're going to meet with some Oklahoma players. Think it might be Riley Ludlam and Kelly Maxwell. Early indications. Hopefully, plans can change. We'll let you know. And I'll recap all of that on Thursday, preview the weekend ahead. That's going to be our rhythm here all weekend long. But where do we start? It was a thunderous entrance into the college softball season. 13-0 over Utah Valley on Thursday. If you missed it, I don't know how you could. We heard so much about true freshman Ella Parker coming into the season. But it was true freshman Cassidy Pickering who opens up her account at Oklahoma with a first inning grand slam. It helped Oklahoma absolutely put it on Utah Valley. Ideal start for the true freshman. She didn't stop there. She finished the day with a second at-bat that delivered an RBI, 5 RBIs. She added another one against Duke. We'll get to that here in a second. Cassidy Pickering, just a picture-perfect opening weekend for her. We saw Ella Parker start off with a couple of walks against Utah Valley. She showed all weekend long great plate discipline. You can see why Oklahoma's very excited. Not just the power that we know that she has from talking to JT Gasso, talking to Patty Gasso, but also that eye going to be huge. And that kind of rolled into, that was the first game on Thursday. The second game on Thursday, you got to see the official Oklahoma debut for one Kelly Maxwell. It was stellar. 5 scoreless innings. You saw a couple of base runners there in the first. Wonder if there was just a little bit of nerves for Kelly. You saw the 1 base runner there in the second inning. Immediately the leadoff gets pushed over the sacrifice. Then from there, Kelly Maxwell retired 11 straight to close that bad boy out. Carly Keeney then came in. You really got to see Oklahoma. They're going to be able to do a lot of what Patty Gasso and Jennifer Rocha love to do, which is start Kelly Maxwell, a lefty, a hard-throwing lefty, and then switch that up and roll over to Carly Keeney, the right-hander. That's a matchup you'll be able to see. You saw that actually against Utah Valley. Start with Nicole May, then move into Kirsten Deal. That's a righty in May, obviously over to the lefty in Kirsten Deal. So there should be a lot of mixing and matching as well. That Duke contest, it was some clutch hitting from Oklahoma, but I think covering Patty Gasso, covering the Sooners the way that I have the last 3 years, one thing she might point to, and she does this so often early in the season, is you look at the 10 runners left on base. Oklahoma had a couple of big opportunities, big-time opportunities to really bust that thing open. Cassidy Pickering might have stepped in. You might have had another grand slam, something like that against Duke. A really strong matchup, but you saw that Oklahoma, they led off against Cassidy Curd, Duke's excellent ace. And that first time through the lineup, Curd held up okay. And then as we've seen so often with this Oklahoma lineup, that second time through is when the Sooners really got to Curd. And then you kind of looked at, okay, we talked about this last year with Patty Gasso early on. They're bringing in so many new pieces. Haley Lee, Sydney Sanders, Alina Torres, all new last year. Jocelyn Erickson was so huge early on in the season. How long does it really take for not just the pass the bat mentality, but being able to hey, everyone's familiar with your hitting system, how you attack hitters, how you come in, and you see that communication in between every single at-bat. If you're at an OU game, you get to see, okay, Jada Coleman, if she flies out, she gets some information. She comes she covers her mouth like this and she starts talking to the next batter. She's passing that along to Tiare Jennings. Tiare Jennings is passing along the knowledge to Kinsey Hansen and all those batters later on in the lineup. And basically what it amounts to is Oklahoma doesn't have to get all the way through the lineup once to really start and make those adjustments and attack pitchers. Sometimes it takes all the way through the lineup one time to kind of see it, but you saw Cassie Curd, who was a sub-2 ERA pitcher a year ago for Duke. She couldn't hang with Oklahoma that second time through. You really saw kind of the second inning Oklahoma seeing her really, really well. Didn't always amount to pushing a ton of runs across, so obviously finished 3-0, but that's a good start. Riley Ludlam came in against Utah Valley. You got to see her make her debut, and then she was huge against Washington. But the big news there was Ella Parker, Cassie Pickering, the two freshmen, got on base a great deal. Pickering with those 6 RBIs on day one. Huge start for Oklahoma, and then that rolled you into the absolute battle with Washington. Oklahoma immediately gets on the board early as Washington doesn't start Ruby Malin. You kind of wondered what was going on there, and then everything broke loose in the second inning. Nicole May had a couple of runners on, and then you get to that strike into Kinsey Hansen, the interference call. She was called for blocking the plate. Did not look like Kinsey Hansen was blocking the plate from here. Oklahoma ended up getting that back where that 8th inning run, the 6th inning run, the safe out call for Washington at the plate was pretty close on second review, but if you felt hard done by that Washington, it was offset by the Kinsey Hansen obstruction at the plate. And so it became a question of Nicole May had a couple of base runners on. Washington was able to bring those around the second inning. All 3 of those runs were unearned runs for Nicole May. So Nicole May still has not given up an earned run this year. So I think the first thing that stuck out about that Washington game is that in the Duke game, you really missed Grace Lyons. And it's not that Tiare Jennings played poorly. It's not that Tiare Jennings had errors or anything like that. It's just the impossible standard that Grace Lyons sets in the field, right? It didn't matter who was playing shortstop. There are simply plays that Grace Lyons makes that no one else can make, or Grace Lyons made that no one else can make. And that's why Patty Gasso said Grace Lyons is the best shortstop she's ever seen, bar none, full stop. And there are a couple of those that you just wondered, Tiare Jennings, impossible plays, diving left, right, the ball that snuck through the left side, you wondered, hey, nothing that Tiare did incorrectly, but was that something that Grace Lyons prevented, covered up, some of those double plays? And that's how you got into the situation where you had the obstruction call that I think if you had all the cameras, even that are in Norman or any of the normal replay stuff, right, that you have once you get into Big 12 play, think that you give a couple looks at that, it probably is overturned, especially at the Women's College World Series, because Kinsey Hansen was in front of the plate, and as the throw comes in, that's what brings her across. To me, that's what the rule is for. Kinsey Hansen certainly thought so, and we talked to her on the franchise on Monday morning, but one of those things that the call is the call, so you move on, and for Oklahoma, it really became a tale of, again, runners left on base for a great deal. 10 against Duke, you had 10 total against Washington until you got to that 6th inning, and it was just as improbable as it gets, right? Stories go, all that stuff. Riley Ludlam, someone that we talked to in the fall, someone that was very excited to be at Oklahoma, the Furman transfer, the reserve catcher, she had kind of talked about, put my name in the transfer portal. Let's just see what opportunities are out there. And the opportunity that came was Patty Gasso giving her a call. Coach Gasso, she talked to us in the fall and said she really didn't know a ton about Riley Ludlam. There wasn't a ton of video available, so kind of going off some word of mouth, some raw numbers, what they could get of Riley Ludlam, and wanted to bring her in is obviously Sophia Nugent and Jocelyn Erickson. Those were Oklahoma's backup catchers behind a Haley Lee who graduated out. Sophia Nugent now at Tennessee. She had a great weekend at Tennessee, by the way, going yard. Jocelyn Erickson now at Florida. It was one of those things that they needed the backup catcher, and so they make the call to Riley Ludlam, and Riley Ludlam has 3 plate appearances this weekend. The first plate appearance was a sac fly, RBI, scores Jada Coleman against Utah Valley. The second one was that massive moment. She comes into the game. If you listen to Chris Plank on the radio call, he was asking Patty Gasso what went into that, and Patty Gasso basically said, just told Riley, swing away, you don't need to hit a home run, anything like that. And it was as good as you'd like. She just lifts it, kind of pokes it right over the shortstop, lays that bad boy down into the outfield. Riley Ludlam, the huge RBI, and it felt like, certainly on the flow stream, That was as big a moment, as big a roar from Oklahoma as any. And Riley Ludlam delivers, but let's back up a little bit. Right before that, it was the transfers, right? Riley Ludlam delivers that. But in the fifth inning, it was Peyton Monticelli who came in. Nicole May finally gets pulled by Patty Gasso. It's something that she had talked about, right? She wants a starter, middle reliever, closer. If that's what they have to do, that's what they have to do. Nicole May gave Oklahoma some great innings against Washington again. None of those runs that Nicole May had were earned runs. They were all unearned runs on Nicole May. Would you like her to rise to that level and get those outs anyway? Sure, but I mean, Kinsey Hansen again, she told us Monday, the obstruction call is called correctly. Washington doesn't score. Oklahoma's still up 2-0. You're not having to worry about that. But Peyton Monticelli comes in, induces a quick pop-up, a fly-out, and then she gets that third pitch strike. And you saw Monticelli, she can come in, she can hurl, she can hit high numbers on the gun. And then she emits those 2 or 3 really big roars to the Oklahoma dugout, a group that looked a little flat. Not totally lifeless, but totally flat. So Monticelli comes in relief of May, delivers. Riley Ludlam in the 6th inning, delivers. Then when Monticelli ran into just a smidge of trouble, Patty Gasso pulled her in the 6th. Carly Keeney, 2 batters face, a little bit of trouble. Patty Gasso pulls her. And then Kelly Maxwell comes in and just absolutely dominates to close. Her first play is a great defensive effort to come forward and field the ball and get the fielder's choice out at home. Then she gets the ground ball that ends up, it was Tiare Jennings over to Alyssa Brito at third base. Gets out of the inning, and then Washington didn't look close. Like Riley Boone, she's the one that delivered, often forgot about in the top of the 8th inning, but she singles through the RBI, and then Kelly Maxwell comes in and shuts that bad boy down. Washington had that runner at third, kind of similar to how Oklahoma got everything going, and Kelly Maxwell's like, boom, boom. No issues, no worries, no problem at all, and that's what Oklahoma got in a veteran in Kelly Maxwell that Carly Keeney's pitched a ton of innings, so she has that veteran ability to her. We saw that against Long Beach State. We'll talk about it here in a second. But what Oklahoma got in Kelly Maxwell was someone that is battle-tested. You don't have to worry about throwing her into the Women's College World Series environment. She's pitched in front of the rowdy fans in Norman. She's pitched in a huge atmosphere in Bedlam and Stillwater. She's pitched against Texas in Austin. You don't have to worry about what she's going to bring to the table. And then from there, you just got killers up and down the lineup. They took turns. Alyssa Brito had the huge 2-home run day against Long Beach State. The Sooners senior finished the weekend with 3 home runs. You had Tiare Jennings delivering at various points. She was excellent against Duke specifically. Jada Coleman leading things off. And the one we talked about there in the top of the 8th against Washington, Riley Boone. What more could you ask from her? It feels like every year that little bunt that just dies right outside the batter's box so she can sprint down the line gets more and more lethal, and that's what you got out of Riley Boone. So that was huge. That was big time. But again, the 10 runners left on base against Duke, 10 runners left on base against Washington. Those are what as the season presses on and Oklahoma rounds into shape, they talk about it all the time. These are the moments that you have to improve and get better and better and better as you get closer and closer to June, right? And peak and play your best softball. Stuff like that, just ratcheting up, converting on more of those opportunities. That is where Oklahoma really turns on. That's how they get better and better throughout the season. And there was plenty of room to improve. And that rolled you into Saturday, the final one, Long Beach State, Patty Gasso's alma mater. They've met a bunch. And you saw Chris Plank, he was talking about how muggy it was. I'd be interested to talk to Patty Gasso and see if how muggy it was affected Kirsten Deal, who looked absolutely fine on the Thursday contest when she kind of came in. Brief cameo against Utah Valley, but looked like she struggled with control a little bit. Oklahoma jumped out early on Long Beach State, but then Long Beach State actually comes back and ties the softball game. And you just wondered for Kirsten Deal, what was it a situation where maybe it was muggy, things like that, as her line wasn't what it's become accustomed to against Long Beach State. But then what does Patty Gasso do? She brings in the Liberty transfer, Carly Keeney. And what does Carly Keeney do? She comes in, faces 13 batters, retires all 13 of those batters, a couple of strikeouts, and it gave Oklahoma enough time for Alyssa Brito to hit a second home run that really got that rally started. It gave Oklahoma enough time to throw Peyton Monticelli in there to close that thing out. And it was really, really comfortable from the moment that Carly Keeney stepped in and she just double-checked, guaranteed, made sure that there was no funny business, nothing like that, as Oklahoma kind of closed out the weekend. So what you're looking at there is the Sooners, again, couple of shutouts on Thursday, no earned runs given up, though the game was 4-3 against Washington on Friday. And then just a little touch-and-go bit from Deal on Saturday, nothing to be really concerned about. And you roll out of that thinking, man, Oklahoma had big performances, and it felt like they really got all those newcomers involved. For me, that was the biggest story of the weekend, is that Ella Parker came in, and though she didn't maybe steal the headlines that Cassie Pickering did with the home runs and things like that, she racked up the walks, had 3 walks. It was a pretty good batting average. Cassie Pickering, she came in and announced herself, but continued through. She got a little bit maybe of a Washington got some video on her from those 2 games on Thursday, and you saw that Ruby Malin especially was attacking the lower outside part of the zone. When Pickering came up, it felt like Washington was giving her a steady diet of low and away. So that's a good thing, right? It gives JT Gasso something to sit down with Cassie Pickering and say, great, the instincts are good. Now let's work on this, start to improve those holes, things like that. And then Riley Ludlam, we mentioned the sac fly against Utah Valley, the single against Washington. She steps in and draws a bases-loaded walk. So you saw the patience from Ludlam against Long Beach State on Saturday. And from there, Carly Keeney shouldn't have any nerves. Kelly Maxwell shouldn't have any nerves. Peyton Monticelli came in, and she contributed in a big spot as well. When you talk about, and Maya Bland even. Maya Bland was used as a pinch runner, and she scored a huge run there against Washington. So you look at it, and really the 3 freshmen that Oklahoma are going to use, as Patty Gasso told us, that Nellie McEnroe, she's going to redshirt probably with a little injury. So you had that going on. So you've got your 3 true freshmen that are not redshirting. Then you've got your 3 pitching transfers plus Ludlam. What more could you want? And oh, by the way, Tiare Jennings, Jada Coleman, Kinsey Hansen, Alyssa Brito, Riley Boone, they all look like themselves. The battle at second base raged on. You saw Alina Torres do it with her bat on Thursday, which kind of earned her some of those starting innings on Friday and Saturday. You saw Avery Hodge in a couple of spots come in and say, okay, maybe you go with Alina Torres to start the game, and then when you want to shut down those innings late and put your best defensive lineup on the field, that's when Avery Hodge steps in. Then you saw, to second base that is, then you saw Pickering and you saw Hannah Core kind of split some time in the outfield. It feels like that's really rounded into shape, as we only saw a little bit of Quincy Lilio. I'm curious to see as Oklahoma heads out to Lake Charles this next weekend, which, again, we will preview that on Thursday. I'm kind of curious to see where that develops, if Q could get more at bats. So if you're watching us on YouTube, though, let me know. Drop us a comment. What player were you most impressed by the opening weekend? It can be a returner or it can be one of the newbies, but let me know in the comment section what player, if you're on YouTube, were you most impressed by, because I'd love to see what you guys are thinking. Love to kind of pick Alex Storacco's brains. I talk to her every week on some of those just debutants and see what all they brought to the table, because now it's all about really focusing on improvement, as you've got Central Arkansas, McNeese State, a handful of games, 5 games total this upcoming weekend. It'll be interesting to see and dial in exactly what Patty Gasso wants to improve on. But what more could you want? I mean, elsewhere around the country, you saw UCLA. Doesn't look like the UCLA that you're accustomed to, but Texas, a huge run rule victory over UCLA. Oklahoma State gets a run rule victory over UCLA. So the Longhorns, the Cowgirls look excellent. Oklahoma and Texas might be 1-2 in college softball, which would be a whole lot of fun down in Austin if that's a top 2 battle happening there, just based on how Texas played this weekend. Obviously, the really bad news, if you missed it, Jordy Ball, that injured ankle at Puerto Vallarta. Haven't seen anything else kind of come out on that to see what her status is, as she went down against Washington. So something to watch there is across the country. It was an action-packed, really fun weekend all across college softball. You saw Charlotte pop up and upset Florida State. So the upsets were aplenty. But again, as was the story a year ago, parity, upsets, all that. You look up, the Oklahoma Sooners are still trucking along on a big, long win streak. We'll see what other fun we can get into on the AllSooners Softball Show as we preview Oklahoma, headed out to Lake Charles, headed out to participate in the Cowgirl Challenge out at McNeese State. But remember, AllSooners.com is your place to be for all your softball coverage all season long. Whether you want the stories, whether you want game coverage, whether you want those live blogs for those big games, especially those games on Flow, I'll be giving a live blog for you. You don't want to pay for Flow, that's totally fine. All those Flow games, we should have live blogs humming. So be sure you're headed to AllSooners.com. Myself, John Hoover, Randall Sweet, Bryce McKinnis, great job top to bottom making sure that we're covering Oklahoma softball, giving you all the coverage you want here at AllSooners.com. But that'll do it for today. We'll talk to you guys on Thursday.